Thank you, Madam Vice President. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, during the general debate of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly, I have the distinct honor to introduce the pre-recorded statement of His Excellency Dr. George Weah, the President of the Republic of Liberia. The statement, inter alia, highlights the challenges we face globally, including the COVID-19 pandemic, and calls for the acceleration and reaffirmation of our shared commitment to multilateralism. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, the pre-recorded statement of the President of the Republic of Liberia. Thank you.
His Excellency Weah Boakai, President of the 75th United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Ambassadors, Heads of Delegations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to have the opportunity to address this 75th section of the United Nations General Assembly on behalf of the government and people of Liberia. Before I begin my address, I would like to pay homage to all the frontline fighters who have paid the ultimate sacrifice to save the lives of others during this COVID-19 period. I also say a special thank you to all the public health institutions and organizations throughout the world that are working tirelessly to bring an end to this dangerous virus that has taken the lives of so many millions in such a short time. I now extend my deepest sympathy and condolences to the bereaved families of all those who lost their lives to this deadly disease. May their soul rest in perfect peace. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I congratulate His Excellency Mr. Weah Boakai on his elections as President of the 75th sessions of the United Nations General Assembly, and assure him of Liberia's further support in this discharge of his commendable duty. We have no doubt, Mr. President, that you will lead this august body successfully and fulfill the expectations and the confidence reposed in you during these difficult times. Please also allow me to congratulate your predecessor, His Excellency Mr. Tijani Muhammad Bandi, for the able manner in which he administered the affairs of the 74th sections of the General Assembly. Let me also commend His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, for his enthusiasm and personal dedication to the work of the United Nations, and for his foresight in devising innovative responses to the challenges of this deadly COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. President, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the theme chosen for this year's general debate, the future we want, the UN we need, reaffirming our collective commitment to multilateralism, confronting COVID-19 through effective multilateral actions could not be more appropriate as the United Nations commemorates the 75th anniversary of its founding amidst the ravages of a global pandemic that has infected nearly 30 million of the citizens of the most of its member states and killed almost 1 million persons globally in just over 6 months. On behalf of the government and people of Liberia, I extend warm appreciation to all members countries of the United Nations and to all international organizations for the global solidarity we have seen in this phase of COVID-19. The world has stood together. Rich countries and poor countries have all been affected and are working together to eradicate this scourge. COVID-19 has taught us that as countries, whether rich or poor, developed or underdeveloped, we are all united by our common humanity. We must all rise above normal divisions to work for a better, fairer, and more united world. Your Excellency, Africa has been hit hard by the pandemic, although the continent has not seen the number of deaths and affected persons as has been the case in many advanced countries. We can only attribute this to the mercy of our Almighty God, who has made sure the predictions of massive numbers of deaths on the continent of Africa did not materialize. In Liberia, we were able to build on our previous experience 6 years ago with the Ebola viral epidemic. And I'm proud to say that the government and its development partners have mounted a robust national COVID response that seems to have contained COVID-19 for the time being. As a result, only about 1,331 Liberians have been affected by COVID-19 to date, of which approximately 1,213 of these have fully recovered, with some 82 Liberians falling to the epidemic. I therefore want to extend special thanks to our bilateral and multilateral partners for the strong support Liberia received to deal with the COVID-19 emergency and help sustain the Liberian economy. The government has now developed a post-COVID economic recovery plan that prioritizes short-term actions and investments in key sectors such as agriculture and tourism as a means of reducing the impact of COVID-19, but also providing the basis for economic recovery. Your Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, the United Nations remains today as the most important forum for peace, conflict resolution, the prevention of war, and the settlement of disputes between nations of the world, as well as the premier international organization for serving the needs of all mankind through its various humanitarian agencies. Nevertheless, the world has changed considerably since it came into existence after World War II, and the configurations of powers which obtained when its chapter was first written and upon which its decision-making structures were based have witnessed many significant transformations over these past 75 years. There is therefore an urgent need to review, refocus, and readjust the priorities of the United Nations so that it can become more relevant and more effective in meeting the challenges that are today presented by new global alliance and realities. In this regard, more attention has to be paid to inclusiveness of the most vulnerable in our societies, whose special needs require a new and different mindset. As part of this process of re-evaluation, the United Nations adopted in 2015 a set of 17 global goals to be met by 2030. These Sustainable Development Goals, as they are commonly called, are intended to serve as a roadmap for our collective efforts to bring peace and prosperity to all mankind. We are already 5 years into the 15 years agenda, and with only 10 years left. It is already clear that we will have to redouble our efforts and accelerate our actions in many areas if we are to attain any or all of these lofty goals by the end of this decade. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, my government has taken many measures since the 74th General Assembly to deal with the persistent socio-economic problems that continue to beset our country. For example, our closure of schools in order to contain the COVID pandemic have seen an unprecedented recent increase in rape and sexual and gender-based violence perpetrated upon young women and girls who have had to stay at home. In response to this epidemic within the pandemic, we recently convened a national conference which involved all sexual and gender-based violence stakeholders. This resulted in the validation of a comprehensive roadmap intended to mitigate the incidence of this menace in our society. Based on the recommendation that emanated from the roadmap, my government has declared rape as a national emergency, appointed a special prosecutor for rape, set up a sex offenders registry, and established a national security task force on sexual and gender-based violence. On the issues of any female genital mutilations, for the first time in our country, traditional leaders have agreed to take ownership for ending this harmful practice. This has resulted into a first of its kind suspension of all activities of all traditional bush schools in Liberia, where this harmful practice is carried out. In addition, we recently passed into law the Domestic Violence Act, a legal instrument that seeks to abolish all forms of violence meted out against women, children, and men. Also, to call attention to the persistence and prevalence of corruption in our society, a national anti-corruption conference was recently held, which was attended by all stakeholders in an attempt to find practical and lasting solution to this age-old problem. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the maintenance of world peace and security is of paramount importance for global growth and development. Every nation without peace is fragile and has an uncertain future. Therefore, as we chart a new course for shared prosperity, we must reaffirm our collective commitment to multilateralism as we confront these new challenges. Multilateralism, international cooperation, and global solidarity will become increasingly important in addressing the complex problem that we now have to solve. Excellency, distinguished heads of states and colleagues, we must all continue to work together as a global community to confront disease and epidemics, fight poverty, and prevent wars. As a founding member of the United Nations, Liberia avails itself as a strong partner in meeting these global challenges. I thank you.